Stay tuned to learn how to make the world's greatest pumpkin pie out of tofu and cookies that your children will actually enjoy. Welcome to Food for Thought. My name is Barbara Kerr, and I'm glad you've joined us today. It's been my experience over the years that when you want to make something healthy, like a dessert, and you go to a healthy cookbook, a lot of times they don't taste very good. How many of you have ever gone to a potluck or a picnic where somebody has made a pie out of tofu and you bit into it thinking that you were going to get a real piece of cheesecake, and what actually happened was you ended up putting it in your napkin and throwing it in the garbage? Well, that's happened to me many, many times, and through my own experience of not being able to eat sugar, I have had to come up with, out of desperation, healthy desserts that taste good. So what I want to share with you today are some desserts, a pumpkin pie. I'm going to show you how to make a whole grain pie crust. We're going to make tofu whipped cream that will go on the top of it. And I'm also going to share with you a cookie recipe that my son absolutely loves. It's peanut butter and jelly cookies. I think you'll like them too. But before we get started, I just wanted to find and share a Bible text with you that was near and dear to my heart when it comes to foods that we need to be careful of. This is found in Romans 13:14, and he says, "But put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh to fulfill its lusts." And I think so often that when it comes to food, and I know for myself that I am always wanting to eat things that are not good for me. I mean, we all crave sugar and high fat, and if you don't, then you're an exception to the rule. But for myself, I have a real difficulty with this. And when we lust after even high fatty foods and things like this, we need to be very careful. A woman, Ellen G. White, wrote over 100 years ago a little book called Ministry of Healing. And she has in here something that also struck me that goes right along with our desserts and healthy cooking. She says on page 194, "Through wrong habits of eating, the appetite has become perverted. Often it demands food that impairs health and causes weakness instead of strength. The diseases and suffering that everywhere prevail are largely due to popular errors in regard to diet." When I read this, I was amazed because I myself had suffered with disease for 15 years. And after looking back at what I had eaten, I realized that a lot of it was through perverted taste. And I'm going to tell you right now that if you love sugar and you're addicted to sugar, you have some perverted taste. And what my goal is today is to show you some alternatives to cooking with the things that you're used to that will still taste good to you. Because if it doesn't taste good, you're not going to make it for your family. You're not going to eat it and enjoy it. So today we're going to get started with a whole grain pie crust, and then we're going to make a pumpkin pie that has even fooled my father-in-law. And if we can do that, then it can fool anybody. Next, we'll be making peanut butter and jelly cookies and tofu whipped cream. The ingredients for our whole grain pie crust are very simple. There's only 5 of them. They are as follows: 1 1/4 cup quick oats. We're going to blend that into flour. 1 cup whole wheat pastry flour. 3/4 teaspoon salt. 1/4 cup oil, and 1/2 cup cold water. We're going to get started first with blending our oats, and you can use the quick oats, the kind that you would mix into cereal, in our blender, because you can turn oats into oat flour at any time that you would like to. We're just going to put the lid on here, and it only takes a few seconds. And that will blend right down. Don't do this at home. We'll let that blend. And in your bowl, you're going to place 1 cup whole wheat pastry flour, don't anybody call me because I'm doing something dangerous. That looks good. You can blend this right into flour, and we'll put it right into our bowl. Okay. And next we're going to mix into this 3/4 teaspoon salt. And we're going to mix in, let's go ahead and mix this. You don't want the salt all in one place. The whole wheat pastry flour is really good if you're going to make a pie crust or you're going to make a cookie or a cake or some kind of dessert. Use whole wheat pastry flour because it is it's ground from the soft wheat berries, and it's much better in pastries, whereas the regular wheat flour is really good for baking breads. And if you make that little change, it can make a big difference in how your recipe comes out. So we're just going to mix this in here, and you're going to actually get your hands into this. I don't like using pastry forks, but you're going to take this and then you can just crumble this into your hand. You want to pie crusts are difficult to make, I think. I've struggled with them for years, and the first time I made this one I thought it was too wet, but it turns out really nice and very moist. But do measure your ingredients exactly. If you're like my husband and he likes to just throw in a little bit of this and a little bit of that, you're going to have a really difficult time coming up with a pastry crust that turns out right. Now we're going to put in our 1/2 cup of water, which sounds like too much, and at first it looks very soupy, but it really is okay. You can see how wet that looks. That's very wet looking. Don't be afraid. It will turn out okay. I wish they would come up with a whole wheat pie crust that you could get at the grocery store, like Pillsbury or something like that, that would be easy to just pull out of the freezer and put right into your pie plate. But I'm still waiting for one that I think is good. So what we're going to do with this, we're going to set this aside. I'm going to show you a little trick that I have learned. That looks good, doesn't it? A little trick that I've learned for rolling out your pie crust to make it look easier to handle. I'm just going to set this under here. What I do is I start out with your countertop and then just take a washcloth that's damp. And you want to dampen it. Okay? And then you're going to take Saran wrap. You're going to take a piece. You're going to have it all over your hands. And you're going to put it over your countertop about the size of what you think you will be rolling it out. These are things they don't teach you at home ec class. So you learn on your own. Okay. Now we're going to put a little bit of flour. You don't want a lot, but we're going to use some whole wheat pastry flour. We're going to put it on here. Let that pie crust set a little bit like we have. Let's see if we can get it from being. Okay, I just want to knead this here so it's all mixed in real well. Okay, you can see that's of a nice consistency now. It's not too wet, it's not too dry. If your pie crust is too dry, it's going to be really hard and disgusting when you put it in your pie plate or when you go to cut it later. So this is for a double crust, so we only need one for our pumpkin pie. So we're just going to take half of this. But you can take this then and roll it out just the way I'm showing you, and stick it in your freezer for when you need to pull one out. So that way when your company shows up or your father-in-law shows up and wants one of those pumpkin pies, you have it ready. Okay. Okay, you want it fairly round when you first start, and then you're going to pull out another piece of Saran wrap, put it over the top. This is highly technical. Okay, this is a dough and pizza roller. I like using this better than a regular pie crust roller. Gives me a little bit more control as to where I want the edges to go. Let's see if we can get it to cooperate today. What you want to do is roll out your pie crust and then set your pie plate on there so you know what size your pie crust is going to be. You don't want it super thin, and if you get it too thick, it's going to be like cardboard. So you don't want that either. But it'll roll out about to the edges of the both two sides of your saran wrap, which will be good. Now, when you're done with this, when you roll out your second one, take it and fold it in half and in half again, and then just stick it in a Ziploc baggie in the freezer, and then you will have one for your next time you need a pie crust. It'll be there. Okay, we're going to test this with our pie plate. You want to set it down on top and be able to see about an inch around each side. I'm going to give this just a little bit more here. That way you'll know it's going to fit in the bottom and come up over the edge. And you're not working with it so that it's in the air and it's drying out. You know how the pie crust gets really hard whenever you make them at home and you just can't seem to get it to turn out? At least mine, I always had difficulty with. So what you're going to do is peel off this top layer of saran wrap. You have a nice moist pie crust. And you're just going to lay it over your pie plate. And try and get that on there so that it's, yeah, there we go. And then you can peel off your second saran wrap. And then make sure on your pie plate to push it down. You don't want any air bubbles in the edges. If you put air bubbles in the edges, it will puff up and you'll lose that part where your filling is. Pie crusts tend to shrink in the oven when they're baking. So we're going to put that there, and we're going to take, we're just going to trim off the edges real quick. This is a stoneware pie plate that I've put this pie crust in. I only bake, well, I try to only bake with stoneware now because I found that the other cookware would burn my food. And for me, I feel like if I'm going to go to the trouble to make food, I really don't want to burn it. And it's nice because it evenly heats it. And you know what color is on the top is the same color on the bottom, and I don't have to worry about that. So you will see me using stoneware when I cook, and that is the reason for it. We're going to poke the bottom. Now I want you to know that this pumpkin pie recipe that I'm making for you today, it sounds easy. There's not that many ingredients in it, but I'll tell you what, it's been a long time. I've made many, many pumpkin pies that did not taste good before I came up with this one, and I'm very happy with it. It has a little bit more of a custard texture than it's not quite as firm as a regular pumpkin pie may be, but it tastes wonderful, and it can fool, like I said, even my father-in-law. As a matter of fact, I was coming up with recipes, trying to rehearse to do, get some recipes ready that I really like because it was almost Christmas time. And I was not going to go through Christmas and Thanksgiving without a pumpkin pie that I like to eat because I thought that would be cruel and unusual punishment to myself. So I was working very hard coming up with it when my father-in-law came over one day. And I just made one, and it happened to be this recipe, and I stuck it in the refrigerator, and he was there for breakfast that morning, and I went to pull it out. I thought, I'm just going to sample it, see how this one turned out. Pulled it out, cut myself a piece. I wasn't offering it to anybody, and he said, Barbara, do you have pumpkin pie there? I said, sure, cut me a piece. So I cut him a piece, and I gave it to him. He's just not into health food, not into anything that's non-dairy or anything like that. Forget it. So I gave it to him. I couldn't even look at him when I gave it to him. I was afraid of what he was going to say or spit it out or something, and he hated it. This is really good. I was like, oh, I was so thankful. So I hope you really like it and that you can fool those people that are hard to fool in your house. And next we'll be making the filling for the pumpkin pie. And I'd like to introduce to you today my assistant, Claudia Welty, my best friend in the whole world, who loves to eat my pumpkin pie, I may say.
Because it's the best. It's like a custard. It's not even a pumpkin pie.
Boy, when we make them at her house, they go so fast you have to make at least 2.
2? That's not even enough for my husband. He could eat 3 of these pumpkin pies. Neighbors come from far away, people that don't even like pumpkins.
Apple we made.
Oh, apple? Well,
all kinds of things. So.
Yeah, she's a great pie maker.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to get started. If we can get all of these done in time. This is very easy. We're going to make the pumpkin pie filling in the blender, and then as this gets really full, we're just going to change it to the mixer. And you're going to start off with some very simple ingredients. There's not very many of them listed for this recipe, so it's easy to get started. And the ingredients for the pumpkin pie are 1 1/4 cup pure maple syrup, 2 teaspoons pure vanilla, 1/2 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon cinnamon, 2 boxes Silken Light Morinu tofu, and 1 small can of solid pack pumpkin. What we're going to do is start off with our pure maple syrup, and we'll put that right into the blender. I've put this in 2 different cups. You want 1 1/4 cup. If you want it a little bit less sweet, you can take out a 1/4 cup is fine. And we're going to put in our vanilla. You want pure vanilla, try and find the one that doesn't have all those ingredients you can't understand. And we're also going to put in 1 teaspoon of cinnamon and a little salt. You want this to mix, you want this to blend up so that there's no cinnamon lumps in here before you put in your tofu. This is the tofu that I like to use in this recipe. It's Morinu Light Silken Tofu, 1% fat. So what I do is open the package up and it'll start to blend in there. You want to use silken tofu whenever you make a pie or any dessert. You want silken. If you use the water packed tofu, it's going to be gritty and gross. Don't do it. So we're going to mix this up first. And you want to try to get your blender, and as this gets more full, it's going to be difficult for it to suck it down, but you want it to be pulling that down so it blends very, very well. Because the smoother it is, that's the secret to the whole recipe. Make it as smooth as possible. We're going to go ahead and add the second one and get this blending. I've only lost a wooden spoon in my blender one time. You can see as it starts to mix, you'll see what you need to. Now you have to be a little bit patient with your pumpkin pie. You're going to mix it down and keep running it, and you'll do that for about, a minute or 2. And then when we get ready to put our pumpkin in, we're going to switch it over to our mixer. So let's run this again. You want it very smooth. The nice thing about this pumpkin pie too is that it doesn't have a lot of spice in it. You know, some of them call for a couple teaspoons of cinnamon and nutmeg and ginger. If you get a tofu pie and you put too many spices in it like that, it will not taste good. You will just taste the spices and it won't have a creamy texture to it. Just blend this one more time and then we'll mix it in. This looks like a very good consistency. So what we're going to do is, you can, if you really have a lot of patience, go ahead and add your can of solid packed pumpkin right into your blender, but it gets right up to the top and you have to be very patient. I think it's about as easy just to put it into a mixing bowl. And since my Oster is really easy to add parts to, we'll just put it right in here and blend this last. That is, if I can get my... All right. Oh, well, it helps if I put it in the right hole. That's okay. I meant to do that. There we go. We've got it in the right one now. So we're going to pour our filling in here. No laughing from my assistant. Okay. If you want to make 2 pies, when you double the recipe, if you put it in an 8-inch pie plate instead of a 9-inch pie plate, you'll have about 2 pies that aren't quite as thick. Or, I mean, you'll end up with 3 8-inch pies that aren't quite as thick if you make 2 of these. This will make a 9-inch pie. Okay, this part I think I can handle. Okay, we'll turn this on low. You just want to mix in your pumpkin. And we'll use a rubber scraper on here. And you can tell when you mix this up, it looks just like you've put the evaporated milk in it and the eggs, and it will cook up and be very nice and firm in the middle. It smells just like and looks just like pumpkin pie. What we're going to do now is take this and pour it into our pie shell. So we have our whole grain pie crust, and we'll just pour this right into here. And you're going to bake this at 350 degrees for an hour and 10 minutes, maybe an hour and 15, it depends on your stove. If your stove bakes over, please, turn it down a little bit. You don't want to burn the edges. So just it'll fill it perfectly. And then take just a little bit of cinnamon and sprinkle the top. This pie is absolutely wonderful. This is ready for the stove. And once you've baked it, it looks beautiful. It has nice golden brown color. Now you'll see it will look like it's kind of boiling in the middle. You'll see bubbles that will come up around the edges. That's what you want it to do to make sure that the tofu is cooking all the way through and it's set properly. So this is absolutely delicious. Make sure and refrigerate it before you serve it. Next, we are going to make our tofu whipped cream, which also it sounds very gross. When I first got into healthy things, I couldn't imagine making anything out of tofu. But tofu will make a very nice whipped cream that you can also put on your pumpkin pie, or you can put it on any dessert that you'd like. So we are going to get rid of these. The ingredients for the tofu whipped cream are 1 cup firm silken light Mori Nu tofu. Don't use the water packed. 1 tablespoon plus 1 1/2 teaspoon canola oil, 2 teaspoons water, 2 tablespoons honey, 1/2 teaspoon lemon juice, 1/8 teaspoon salt, and 1 1/2 teaspoon vanilla. I've changed that from white vanilla to regular vanilla. We have made our whipped cream in our blender already, and I couldn't find a white vanilla that I thought wasn't made with a bunch of disgusting ingredients. So even though it makes it a little bit lighter color, go ahead and just use regular pure vanilla. And then you can just take a teaspoon of this and dollop it onto your pumpkin pie, and it's very, very tasty. And it's not very high in fat. We've used a tofu that is very low. We're going to go ahead and get started with our not our pumpkin cookies, but our peanut butter cookies for you today. And we're going to hurry through these so that you have time to see how we mix them up. Okay.
Too fast.
Okay. We're going to start with our ingredients on our peanut butter and jelly cookies. They are 1 cup pure maple syrup, 1 teaspoon pure vanilla, 3/4 teaspoon salt, 3/4 cup peanut butter, 1/4 cup water, 1 1/4 cup quick oats blended into flour, and 2 cups whole wheat pastry flour. And we're going to use blackberry all fruit jam. We're going to start by putting our 1 cup of pure maple syrup into our bowl. And we're going to add our vanilla and 3/4 teaspoon of salt. You're going to put in your peanut butter, which I hate measuring peanut butter, but because it's so gooey. But you get the idea. We're going to turn this on so it can start mixing. And we're going to put in a 1/4 cup of water. And then we're going to mix into this your whole wheat pastry flour again. You want to use whole wheat pastry flour, not regular whole wheat flour, because it will make your cookies and pastries much better. We're putting in 2 cups. And this is going to make a very thick dough that you're going to roll out. And we've already blended our oats into oat flour, so we're just going to add them. And this gets nice and thick. If it gets to be too much for your mixer, then you can finish blending it by hand. But you want a nice thick dough. Okay, there we go. Okay. And now it is all in our beaters. What we're going to do now is roll these into little balls, and then we're going to stick our thumb into them and make a thumbprint type of cookie. And then we're going to take a 1/2 teaspoon of blackberry all-fruit jam, and we're going to put in the middle. So we'll take this. You can clean this better at home. And as you can see, it's really, really thick. You'll think that it's too thick, but it's not, because you have to roll this into little balls. So what I do is, actually what I use is a 1 tablespoon scoop so that I know all of them are the same size. And then I take it out, roll it into a ball, and I have my, and then I'll just let them sit on here. I'm just going to make a couple for these, and you get the idea. And then just take your thumb. You're going to want to let these set, or they're going to stick to it like this. My thumb is. You can take your thumb and stick it in flour to get down to where you need it, or you can just let them set for 5 minutes. Don't use an all-fruit. Do not use Polaner as all-fruit jam. It's too thin. And then just scoop your 1/2 teaspoon. Get a generic brand. It works the best. And then you're just going to scoop that into there. And then you're going to bake that at 350 for about 12 to 15 minutes. And then you have beautiful peanut butter and jelly cookies that your children will absolutely eat, I promise. And they taste wonderful. I hope that these recipes today will help you in your endeavor to make food that is healthier, that tastes really great for your family, because it's very enjoyable once they eat your food and say, "Mom, this is wonderful."